Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Apostolic Children's Ministry podcast. This is episode 101, and yes, I know it's been a little bit since our last episode, which just happened to be the big one, number 100. And so the reason for the delay is because I'm lazy. Well, I'm kidding, kind of. The truth is that the 100 episode was a beast. It was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of work, and we had, I think it was 4 hours and 45 minutes of raw content that we had to edit down to the final version, which ended up being around an hour and 45 minutes. And that's a lot of stuff left on the cutting floor, and even more hours, somewhere between 6 and 8 hours spent editing the video, splicing clips, and trying to make it all flow together. And if you're one of those incredible people who send in videos, memories, or content, thank you so much. I think the end result turned out pretty fun, a lot of great moments, lots of nostalgia, a lot of memories. Quite frankly, there was a lot of stuff in there that I didn't even remember until we started bringing up old videos and stuff. But now it's permanently archived, and whenever we need to, whenever I need a good laugh, I can always go back there and look at it. Now, going forward, I think we'll see how this turns out, but I think I'm going to be changing up the format of the podcast a little bit. Don't worry, we're still going to bring in the team from time to time to talk Sunday school, share updates from in the Lighthouse, and talk about children's ministry across the nation. But as you can imagine, and if you've done a podcast, you know how this is. It's not always easy to get everybody's schedules lining up. And so from time to time, this is going to be more of a solo mission. Just me and whoever decides to listen. And we're going to try to keep that content coming, break it up into smaller pieces. And I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try to introduce some reoccurring segments each week that will rotate through to try to keep things, fresh and fun. And this is where I really do need your help if I could. After you listen today, I would love your feedback. Seriously, if you can. I need to let me know what you think. Email at info@apostolicsundaySchool.com. Shoot me a text if you got my number. Leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify or whatever. Which brings me to a quick side note. One of the best and the most frustrating things about podcasting is that every platform you post on is different. A comment on Apple Podcasts won't show up on Spotify. Podbean has no idea what's going on with Buzzsprout and all the different places. But wherever you're listening, your feedback matters. And it's not really, I probably should care about ratings. I kind of don't, but I probably should. But I do want your feedback. So even if you leave like a comment on Spotify, I probably won't see it if it's on iTunes. I'm sorry, all you Apostolics out there that are angry right now. Just give us your feedback. Love to know what you think. But enough of all the housekeeping. Let's kick this thing off. And an appropriate way to do it, I was inspired once again by my good friend, Brother James Pelletier, to do a joke. That's right. Yep. We're going to launch off episode 101 with a dad joke. I'm leaning in on this. Brother Pelletier, this is your fault. And I'm a dad, so that kind of means I have a license to do this. So here we go. Well, there was an old man, and he got older and older, and he started losing his hair until one day he was on his deathbed. He was completely bald, and that day he called his children to a meeting. He said, "Look at my hair. My hair used to be so magnificent, but now it's completely gone. My hair can't be saved, but I want you to look outside. You see that forest out there? It's lovely. There's so many trees, but sooner or later, they're all going to be cut down, and this forest will look as bald as my hair. What I want you to do is every time a tree is cut down or dies, I want you to plant a new one in my memory. I want you to tell your descendants to do the same. It's going to be our family's duty to keep this forest strong." And so they did. Every time the forest lost a tree, the children of this man replanted a tree, and so did their children, and their children after them. And for centuries, the forest remained as lush and pretty as it once was, all because of one man and his reseating airline. We mentioned in the 100th episode that me and Brother Bob Lee sat down after doing our fishing trip, and we decided to write down all the lessons that we learned about children's ministry and about working in the kingdom of God from this trip. And so every podcast, at least until I run out of material, I'm going to share a lesson that I learned from that fishing trip and how it connects to children's ministry. So here's lesson number 1. And I think I wrote this in the Together magazine article, but if I did or didn't, I really don't know. I could go check, but that's way too much work. But let me explain. We were out on the boat and there was a few people that were there and they were telling fishing stories. Now, if you've ever been around a fisherman, this is nothing new. Fishermen love to talk. They love to tell stories. And these stories got pretty wild. They were all about that huge fish that someone else had caught or wild stuff that had happened on trips way back in the day. And the stories were awesome. They really were. The problem was that these same people that were telling me all these stories about all their heroic events in the past and all these great things that they had witnessed, I had just watched those same people get skunked 2 hours before. I mean, not a bite. They hadn't done anything worth noting. And that's where the lesson came in that I learned. And that lesson is, don't just live off of stories. Don't just live off of fishing stories. Don't just live off past wins. You need to make your own current stories, your own moments, your own wins, and yes, even your own we came back with nothing kind of trips, because that's part of it too. But the same thing as Sunday school. Don't always talk about that one big amazing day that we had in the past. That one altar call that was unbelievable where we had a bunch of kids pray through. That one lesson that Bob Lee did that one time when he nearly burned we might be talking about that for a while. Don't be talking about only talking about the past history, that one incredible revival we have. And those things are good to remember. But is that all we have? Is stories of the past? What are we doing now? We've got to make our own stories every single Sunday, create moments, create new things. Yes, make mistakes even, and grow. And the next time you're sitting around a table, you'll have your own story to tell, and not just one that you remembered from 10 years ago, or one even worse that you borrowed from somebody else. I want to talk about an object lesson idea. That's right. Every single podcast, I want to mention an object lesson idea that I came across that I want to share with you guys. And this one is pretty cool because we probably all taught in the past on don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge by appearances. And the verse that you can use with this is 1 Samuel 16:7. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And you'll start off with having 2 gifts. There's 2 wrap gifts. One of them is wrapped beautifully, shiny paper and bows and a ribbon, maybe even a little bit bigger. It's all nice and pretty. The other one's going to look torn and wrinkled and messy. You're going to make it intentionally not very attractive, something that, the normal person wouldn't want. And you're going to start teaching about don't judge appearances, how man looks on the outward appearances, but God looks on the heart. And I have these 2 gifts today, and one looks really nice and the other one not so much, but we're going to learn something important about what really matters. Now, it's important that in the build-up, you really talk about don't judge a book by its cover. And so after you've really done that, then you call up someone and you say, I want to give you a gift, but you get to pick which one. Now, the obvious object lesson here is if we hadn't already taught that lesson, if we hadn't said anything about don't judge a book by its cover, if we hadn't said all that, the kids generally are going to go for the bigger, prettier gift. But now that we have said all that, we've really focused on don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, we hit that hard. Many times now they're going to choose the opposite. They're going to choose the ugly one on purpose. They're going to pick that one because, man, you just made such a big deal that it's not about the pretty, it's about the bad one. And if they pick that one, it really doesn't matter which one they pick. But if they pick the ugly one, you're going to ask them why and let them go ahead and explain why. But then you're going to open both gifts, and inside both gifts are exactly the same prize, exactly the same treat. And we're going to make it a point of saying you can't judge a book by its cover. You also don't want to say, hey, this one isn't as appealing, so therefore it must be more important. I know that's that reverse psychology there. But people that look like they have it all together, they still need God too. The people that that are rough on the outside. We know God cares about them and we make a big deal. But sometimes the kids that come into our classrooms that look like they have it all together, that are wearing the clean clothes, that have their hair combed properly, sometimes we don't focus on them because they already know all of the stuff that we're going to teach them. But that's not the case. Those kids need God just as much as the others. And I think this is a really cool object lesson where you open them both up. And it doesn't matter what they look like because the inside is exactly the same. Don't judge a book by its cover. Another new part of the podcast I would like to do is to go on Apostolic Sunday School and find an old object lesson, an old song, an old skit, something that has been on there for a while. And so the one I want to mention today is an object lesson called Surround Yourself with the Right Things. But it's based on the concept of a fire tornado. So if you look up Apostolic Sunday School, Surround Yourself with the Right Things, it's on YouTube under the same name, or you can look up fire tornado, and it'll come up with this video. But it's really cool because this one is a very small fire that you light. You can have like a tuna can or something. You can maybe do a cloth that's soaked in lighter fluid, or maybe even like a piece from a fire starter log. Like the Duraflame, you can cut a little chunk out and use that, light it. And you're going to have a flame, it'll grow maybe 3 or 4 inches. Not that impressive. And you'll put that tuna can holding, I say tuna can just because you don't want to light anything on fire. It doesn't matter. A small bowl, anything that they can still see the flame, on a Lazy Susan. A Lazy Susan basically is something that you can spin. And so the tuna can sits on there and you spin it. Now I did find that it slips, so you can put something that's going to lock it in place, like a double-sided tape that won't melt, or that putty, or little blocks is what I did, like pin little blocks in a shape around that tuna can to lock it in place, and you spin it and really nothing happens. It doesn't change. It doesn't grow. It doesn't shrink. It just is. It just happens. But if you surround that tuna can with a screen of some kind, you can either get like a chicken wire, like with a real fine mesh, or you can get even a trash can, a small wire trash can, and you set it around that fire, and then you spin it. That spinning flame, the spinning wind creates a fire tornado that makes that little 3 or 4 inch flame go, it'll go as high as the top of the screen. So it might go, 24, 30 inches as high as you have the screen. It's really cool. It makes that tiny flame get monstrous because of what surrounded it. And you can talk about how the things that surround us can affect us, whether it's good things or bad things. It can affect us and make us stronger. So that's a really cool one. And I just wanted to bring that up because I haven't even really thought about that in a while, and I haven't done it in my class in a while. And hey, it might be the time. I might need to do it. All right, so I want to introduce another part of the podcast, something I think could be really useful. And every now and then I'm going to highlight a resource that I've come across. It might be a website, podcast, book, teaching tool, something I've stumbled on that made me think, yeah, this is good. More people need to know about this. Could be something new, something old, but if it's helpful for Sunday school or children's ministry, I'm just going to throw it out there. But first, I'm going to circle around to something I brought up a long time ago, but I really haven't mentioned it a whole lot since. And that is, get yourself a notebook. To me, digital is just so much better because, to be real, your phone is always with you 24/7. But a notepad isn't always there when you need it. You can get a notes app, Google Keep, Evernote. I don't care what it is. I think I use OneNote for the most part, but it doesn't matter what you use. Whatever it is, have a spot you can jot down ideas the moment they hit you. Maybe it's during a sermon, when you're reading your Bible, you're listening to a podcast, an audiobook, or maybe just a random thought while you're driving in your car or scrolling on your phone, whatever it is. But when something triggers an idea, something that makes you think, ooh, I could use that in Sunday school, write it down immediately, right away. Don't wait. Don't assume you'll remember, because if you're like me, you just won't remember it. You don't have to turn it into a full lesson right then. Just capture the idea, and later when you're preparing for your class, brainstorming for whatever you're going to be doing, you can scroll through that notebook and you're going to find some gold nuggets. Now, there's some that are just kind of dumb. Trust me, I have lots of really dumb stuff in there. But I've got hundreds of notes in there. And so today I thought I'd open it up and just kind of scroll from the top. And these are just a couple that caught my eye. First one is the still small voice. Now we hear about this all the time. But you hear about Elijah listening, and then God spoke with a still small voice after hearing all of the ways that he was talking to him before with the wind and all that. But if I get anything out of that story, it is, and in this particular note, it is that I don't want God to have to yell at me to get my attention. Because there's some people that only respond when life falls apart, when tragedy hits, when everything gets loud and chaotic and crazy. But I want to be the kind of person, and I'm not always the right kind, but I want to be the kind of person who listens when God whispers. I don't want him to have to whack me on the head with a hammer. I don't want him to have to shake my whole world just to get my attention. I want to respond with little stuff, that little nudge, little stirring, something subtle. And that's where I want to live. That's the kind of sensitivity I want to have. Here's another one. My brother was talking, and he brought up a story about the largest cavern that was ever discovered. I think it was down in South America somewhere. But when these guys that were in the caves, these spelunkers, they broke into this cave, they didn't know how big it was because they were coming from these tight tunnels, scraping their way through tight spaces, very claustrophobic. And suddenly they broke into this massive, wide open space. It was so big, so overwhelming, so massive, they couldn't see walls. They couldn't see the ceiling. Their lights weren't bright enough to light up anything but where they were standing. And it disoriented these people. It said they had to lay down on their backs because they were so disoriented. It almost made them dizzy. They had to lay down just to take it all in. And like my brother, my pastor said, that's God. Some people have been stuck in these tiny, painful boxes and trapped by life and bad decisions and all the things that people deal with. And then God starts revealing himself to them. And it can be overwhelming in his grace and his power and his love and all the different things that we take for granted can be too much to take in sometimes. That's just how big he is. Last one, and this is stupid, but please stick with me. But I normally shave with a straight razor. Especially when I've let things go a little too long, and it works great. It cuts through everything, gets me back my little baby face. But if I'm staying on top of it, I can use an electric razor that I keep in my drawer in my office. Quick, it's easy, no fuss. But if I let it go too long, that electric razor doesn't do a thing. It's just not built for cleanup. It's built for maintenance. Just kind of keeping things where they need to stay. And that's like life. If you stay on top of the little stuff, your classroom, personal life, finances, health, spiritual walk, it doesn't take a lot to keep everything in order. But if you let it go too long, suddenly you have to do a full-on overhaul to get things back where they should be. And spiritually, you're pulling out that shaving cream and scraping things off with the blade instead of just staying trimmed with a quick pass. Maintenance is easier than recovery, and I've been on both sides of that. So yeah, there's some random thoughts from that notebook. I've got hundreds more. But if you don't have one yet, a notebook system for yourself, start one, because those little tiny things that occur to you quick, they can turn into really cool lessons or like this, a podcast episode, teaching moment, all kinds of stuff. But keep your eyes open, write it down, and you never know what it's going to turn into. So there's a guy I read about who absolutely loved to play chess. He was super passionate, super competitive, and you think he'd be great at it, right? Except he hated studying the game. Didn't want to mess with openings, didn't want to watch old matches, didn't want to learn the classic strategies. He just wanted to play. He just wanted to sit down and play, and he figured, I'll just kind of figure it out as I go. But that's not what happened. Turns out there was a friend of his who started learning chess at the same time that he did, and this friend kept beating him, and he couldn't figure out why, and it drove him crazy. Well, the reason was that his friend did the things that he didn't want to do. His friend studied, and his friend learned from people who had already played the game. You see, he was reading up on these things called chess openings. These are moves that have been established by past masters that have been proven to be good and put you in a good position to play the game. Well, this friend paid attention to those, and pretty soon it wasn't even a contest. The guy that refused to study realized something. Wanting to be good doesn't actually make you good. You actually have to do the work. You can't just wing it and expect to win consistently. But this podcast isn't about chess. You don't have to study the book, as those chess openings are called. They're called books, studying book. Well, you don't have to study book to enjoy chess. And to be real, you don't have to study the other book, the good book, the Bible, to call yourself a Christian. Now, let's be honest. You can teach Sunday school without ever cracking open a book. You can wing it. You can pull something together the night before and just kind of coast from one Sunday to the next. And sure, you'll survive. You'll check the box, but you will never leave a lasting impression, a lasting mark on those kids. If you go beyond the bare minimum, if you want to truly impact your class and change lives, you have to invest in growth. The Bible says you have to study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And that does not just apply to your pastor and to preachers, but it's for anyone who's handling this word, the Bible, and that includes us, the Sunday school teachers. You got to study the Bible. You've got to read books. You've got to listen to people who have been doing this for a long time. You got to attend training seminars, and sometimes it costs money and time, but you got to do it if you want to make an impact. Seek out the wisdom. You don't just improve by accident. If you're not actively learning, you're drifting, and drifting never moves you forward. And we see this everywhere. Medicine is a great example. Imagine if every single new doctor had to start from scratch. No textbooks, no medical school, no passed down knowledge. We would still be like they did with poor George Washington and all those others, bloodletting, giving people mercury like it's medicine. But that's not how it works. Every generation stands on the breakthroughs of the one before it. Same with tech. I love technology. But you don't reinvent the microchip every time you build a new iPhone. No, you build on what came before, and that's what progress is. And in the kingdom of God, it works exactly the same way. In chess, they say, once you're out of the book, you're on your own. That means once you get past the known, well-studied stuff, now you're relying completely on yourself, on your own mind, your own instincts. And that's fine if you're a grandmaster, but for most of us, we need book. We have to have book. We need the guide. We need the foundation. And that book, like I said, for us is the Bible. And once we step outside of that, we're in very dangerous territory. And here's the bottom line. You're not smarter than the chess masters. Spiritually, we're not smarter than the elders who have gone before us. You're not smarter than saints who have spent decades walking with God and praying and failing and getting back up and figuring things out. I'm going to tell you a story real quick, and it's one that still hits me pretty hard. It's about someone that I knew very well. I'm not going to say their name on purpose, but every time I think about it, it still hits me. It was a preacher I knew, and he had everything in the world going for him. I looked up to this man. I wanted to be him. I wanted to act like him. I wanted to do the things he could do. This guy was crazy smart, talented on a level that goes beyond normal talent. One of those guys who could do anything and do it well. He could preach. He could sing. He could do it all. He pastored a great church. Things were booming. And somewhere along the way, though, he started to let his guard down a little bit, started to let some standards down, started to let some doctrinal things that were so important in the past down, started compromising a little bit here. And one of the elders in his life, someone that really cared for this young man, tried to warn him. They tried to talk to him, and he brushed him off. And his words still stick with me. He said, I know what I'm doing. I know other people have made this decision and it messed them up, but I'm not them. And this was the words he used. He said, I can handle it. Bottom line is he was saying, I know more than you do, elder. I don't need your warnings. I don't need your wisdom, because he believed that he would be the exception. But I don't even think I need to tell the end of the story, but he was not the exception. Now that church that he built is basically gone. His family's falling apart. His ministry is destroyed. And I'm telling you this because I love this man. I wanted to be him. And it kills me to see what has happened. But he chose to ignore history. He chose to ignore the voices that God had put in his life. And this man paid the ultimate price for that chutzpah. We're not the foundation. We're the framework that's built on what came before. Jesus is the ultimate foundation. He's the cornerstone. And then our elders came and they have made a pattern that we can follow. We're just building on what came before. And I love that because that means I don't have to start from zero. We can start and build higher because someone else already laid the groundwork. Not studying what somebody else has learned is really dumb. Let's just say it like it is. It's like putting your hand in fire just to see what happens. Dude, someone else has already burned their hands, so you don't have to. Why on earth are we repeating their same mistakes? Learning from the past makes us better. It makes us stronger. It makes us less likely to fail. And that's true in everything. It's true in everything spiritual. It's true in ministry. And it's 100% true in the whole purpose of this podcast, which is children's ministry or Sunday school. Now, imagine that every single Sunday school teacher had to come up with everything from scratch. Every object lesson, every game, every puppet. They had to make it themselves, of course. Every craft, every theme, every decoration. You'd lose your mind. But you don't have to do that because so many other people have done that before and they put it away in sometimes even in physical boxes that people in your church have already done that you can go and get it out of the box. Sometimes in files, sometimes online. It's available to you. It's a resource. So don't let it go to waste. And this is a big chunk of the point of this podcast is take the information that you have, that you've developed, and package it and share it and pass it on and let the next teacher that comes after you stand on your shoulders and reach higher than you ever could. And listen, when that young teacher steps in, and they do a phenomenal job. They absolutely crush it. Whatever you do, never let insecurity creep in. You need to cheer them on. You need to brag on them. You need to tell them how proud you are of them because that's what you set them up to do. I can't say this enough because my dad can't say it enough. He says it all the time that insecurity is one of the biggest threats to leadership. It turns encouragers into critics, mentors into gatekeepers, and if we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves bitter about someone else's breakthrough when we're the ones who helped make it possible in the first place. But real leadership and real maturity, it is happy when they're surpassed. It rejoices when the next generation is better than they are. That's not failure. Oh my goodness, that's fruit. That's the whole point. And I can tell you firsthand that I know this from experience because I saw someone model this for me my entire life, and that is my father. He's one of the greatest Christians I've ever known, and he did not start that way. He was, as anybody that's read his book, he was a self-proclaimed fighting hippie who stirred up more trouble than good, but God got a hold of him, and he clawed his way forward through the Word, through prayer, and everything that he could do to become everything he could for God. And what did he do with all that knowledge now? He gave it away. He gave it away to churches, to his family, to his sons. And when my older brother became pastor, he started doing things a little bit different. I'm not talking doctrinally. No. That has never, ever changed. It is an apostolic, one God, Jesus name, church, believing in revival and holiness. That's never going to change. But he's not the same person my dad was. And so he started doing things a little bit different, all good, all positive, but there can be some friction sometimes. And my dad started seeing the church succeed. Not that it wasn't before, but started seeing revival. And did my dad get jealous? Was he frustrated that the church was growing in new ways? Not even a tiny bit. My dad was on the sidelines cheering louder than anybody else, because he was seeing the fruit of all of the things that he had sown all of those years. And that's what legacy looks like. Sunday school teachers, please listen. Don't just make your classroom great. Make every classroom around you better. Don't hoard your resources. Don't guard your skits like trade secrets. Share your stuff. Post it. Email it. Dropbox it. Share it. Just get it out there. Whatever you have to do, put it out there. In fact, I'll take it a step further. Don't just build your local church's Sunday school. What about other churches? What about other Sunday school ministries across the nation? We need to share what we've learned to them as well. We need to pass this on. As we all know, this truth is too important to keep locked in one place. And our job isn't to protect our little patch of ground. Our job is to plant it, grow it, and then hand it off to somebody else who's going to take it further than we ever dreamed. So teach, train, share, pass it on. Let's not hoard what we've learned, but let's launch this next generation of kids and young people into the stratosphere. Let them be on the shoulders of not just our elders, but us as well. And let's lift them as high as we can and see what God can do in these last days.